There's a very special place on the internet where strangers ask questions to other strangers. It's very famously known as AskReddit. And today, we are going to be answering the deep, dark questions of the internet. Just kidding, it was a surprise microphone! When I just typed in AskReddit, this popped up from a year ago and it looked really intense. So here we go. What is your secret that you can't tell anyone because it will probably ruin your life? I didn't stop doing martial arts because I was annoyed that they took in a kids group and we were expected to help coach them while paying for our own classes. I stopped because fighting other men made me horny as hell, and that was not in a context in which I wanted to interact with kids. Wow. And then I realized how f***ed up it was that I was fighting other guys for my sexual gratification while they just saw it as fighting, period. So fighting on a whole kind of got shameful and disgusting, so I quit. Hey, look, hey, you know what? Good for you. Good for you checking that out and be like, you know what? As weird as this was before, now that there's kids involved, I want out. I think it's good. You saw your limitation. You were like, hey, you know what? I can kind of get this little undercover like sexual satisfaction out of the way, you know, just me and you, a couple of men fighting gets me mentally, you know, turned on and maybe a little physically and all that stuff. That's pretty sick. And then suddenly a kids group comes in and you're like, ah, I quit. What if this guy was like just a second away from getting his black belt? What if he was like a high brown belt or a red belt or whatever it is, and then he's like about to do his black belt test, and then this ocean of 6-year-olds come in and he's like, I think I'm gonna go now. I think I'm gonna go home now. Is that okay? Everybody good? Everybody good? I'm gonna stop doing this thing. Yes, it's bad to do something for your sexual gratification, but it's worse when there's kids involved. And this guy, Jesus, let's see these replies here. You know what? I highly respect the fact that you recognized a kink in yourself, realized that it wasn't right to partake in it without the explicit consent of your partner, so to speak, or when it was around children, and chose not to continue. A lot of people would have just kept justifying it to themselves and digging themselves into a deeper hole, but you nipped it in the bud. That takes a lot of self-reflection and a lot of self-control. I hope you can find a safe outlet if you ever decide. This is so true. It's respect to just like be able to stop. You know? Karate makes me feel so special. This guy says, I don't give my best at work because I don't care anymore. I used to give them 100%, nobody noticed, and only focused on the small mistakes I made. Now I give 40 to 50%. My manager keeps bugging me why my performance has dropped compared to before. I simply don't care. The salary is fine compared to the country standard, but in this field of work, it's on the lower end of the chart. I don't care. I'm overworked and underpaid by industry standard, not countrywide standard. Okay. This person, very simply, I'm wearing shorts, by the way. Look at all that skin. Oh my God. This person very simply doesn't care. I bet a lot of you could probably relate to that, right? You pick up a job, you try your best, and your best just isn't good enough. And so you're like, well, why even bother? If I'm just gonna get a bunch of flack for doing my job, I think I've read a statistic once that the #1 reason why people quit their jobs is because they feel mismanaged. It's because of their manager. It's because their manager doesn't know how to be good. How to be a good man. Manager, more like man a jerk. I have automated the main part of my job and get paid to essentially just show up. Love that. That's pretty exciting. I think there's a book called The 4-Hour Work Week by Timothy Ferriss that talks about how to do that. Let's see what the replies say to that. I work for a top 50 Fortune company. I learned to code in PowerShell and automated like 90% of my job, except for 10% that I can't automate yet. So I use most of my free time building my side business and learning to trade, I think is the smartest thing to do. Look, man, here's the deal. If you're able to automate the main part of your job, then that's great. As long as the job gets done, I don't feel like the boss is going to care if they can't see it or tell. You know what I'm saying? Do it. If you work a job that you think you can automate and you don't have to worry about, do that without, you know, actually don't listen to me. I'm a YouTuber. I'm a YouTube boy. Please don't listen to me. I don't want you to lose your job. Okay. I don't want to see a comment being like, hey, I did what you said. And then I got fired. I don't want to see that in my comments. That would be bad. That would be bad news for me. Bad news for you. I have no idea what I'm doing at work. 30,000 upvotes. The amount of time I spend clicking my mouse on my empty desktop and writing gibberish into a Word doc that I delete at the end of the day is shocking. What? Who has jobs where they don't know what they're doing? What kind of a job is that? Is it like telemarketing maybe? I feel like if I were in telemarketing, I'd have no clue what was going on ever. I'd be, oh man, my social anxiety, I'd be so scared. This is what I think is wild. I went from working in a medium-sized group wearing multiple hats and getting shit done to working in a giant corporation where if I draft an email reply and then send it at the end of the day, everybody claps for me. This is a... You know what? The bigger the organization, the less work each individual feels like they have to do. Sometimes the most effective thing you can do if you're running a new small business, such as myself, maybe I'm just talking to myself right now, is slim down, okay? And just kind of like, you're able to move so much faster and get more done because you're able to see what's going on, you know? But big corporations, man, sometimes it's tricky. Things get lost in the weeds, as they say. I stopped working at work 1 year back. I have no idea what the they want from me because I watch 12 hours of shows on my laptop and work for 30 minutes a day by attending a team huddle and staying on mute. There's a lot of confessions in here of people just not working. What is that? Are these like money laundering schemes? The reply to that says, 3 to 4 years ago, I was responsible for providing a few reports to different teams. Each month, I generate the reports, format it in a presentable way for the team managers I was sending them to, and send them over. Nobody ever said anything about them, never a question about the data, or even a reply to my email. So 1 month, I just decided I wasn't going to send them, and then it turned into 2 months and 3 months, never ever said a word about it, so I just stopped doing it, got promoted the following year. Here's a reply to that. Honestly, best advice when you start a job like that is to stop sending reports and updates, then see who notices. So many reports are created because one manager didn't know one piece of info once and got embarrassed. Stop sending, work out what's important and who needs to be kept happy, then focus your energy on useful tasks. This is so mind-blowing to me because I, as a YouTuber, I have to output videos and you have to see me. It's a very literal from me to you, here's the delivery, you know, and it's the proof is in whether or not the video's been made. It's extremely deliberate. Same thing as like working in a coffee shop. You can't work in a coffee shop and not do any work because then the lattes don't get made or like the beans don't get ordered or the money isn't accounted for. Like, how do you have these office jobs that you can just do nothing? What do people do? What do people do? The thought of a real job, like, doesn't make any sense to me. This kind of stuff. And I'm sure you watching, like, if you have a weird or unusual job where you think you could skate by, can you write in the comment? I want to know what kind of jobs can just go completely unnoticed? And why does upper management, like, let these costs be inflated? I mean, it's nice to have a job. That's fine. But I'm just so curious how that's even possible. I don't even understand. This one's really good. Let's try this one. What was your I'm dating / married to a idiot moment? These are going to be pretty juicy, I think. She thinks that north is always uphill, so prefers to walk south. You know what I really like about this is that next to this story here, there's something under relationship advice that says, my husband is extremely dumb, but loving and caring, frowny face. Man, it's a pretty big trade-off right there. I made the mistake of telling my wife to go north. She asked, my north or your north? I'm not gonna lie, I'm not that good, right? Because I still go never eat soggy waffles. Anybody do that? What's the mnemonic that you guys, I know there's another one out there. I don't remember what it was. Girl I was dating was making nachos and shredding cheese. She cuts herself and blood gets on the cheese and the shredder. As she gets a Band-Aid, I pick up the cheese and as I'm throwing it away, she freaks out as now I may have AIDS. Like what? She is freaking out that I just got exposed to AIDS and I needed to get medical attention. After talking, it turns out she thought AIDS was everywhere, like any blood outside the body could just magically get it. Her stupidity was a relief that night. If I was cleaning something up and my girlfriend's blood was on there and she starts freaking out going, don't do that, you might get AIDS, I would think, oh, you must have AIDS. But this person just thought that any blood outside of their body has AIDS? My partner was grunting and groaning at the bin, aka trash can, garbage can. He said, we need new bin bags. These ones you bought don't bloody fit. Went over to see what was going on, and he had a roll of small black dog poo bags in his hand with one unfurled, trying to work out why it wouldn't fit in the bin. There were bin bags. He just picked up the wrong roll instead of realizing, tried to get a dog poo bag in a bin 50 times bigger. They're small. They come in those small little rolls. They're like really tiny. They're like a roll of money or something. They're so small. How are you going to... Come on, man. That's insane. I am crying imagining a grown man trying to stretch a doggy bag. I would like to think that this guy was just doing it for the bit. Have you ever done this thing where you pretend to be stupid about something because you think it's hilarious? This is one of those times where I would just commit to it. But when those moments happen and you realize that the other person is just dumb, what's the dumb threshold for you to end a relationship? When does it go like, I can't do that, that's too dumb? You know, not knowing north and south, that's fine. That's fine. That's not too dumb, but not knowing how to Google something or look up simple information, to me, that's a bit too far. That's a bit too far for me. My now ex-husband legitimately thought that having a hysterectomy meant that your vagina was removed. How would you remove your vagina? What do you mean removed? I learned this when he asked me how women who had a hysterectomy were able to pee. Further discussion led to the realization that he thought that a hysterectomy resulted in a nice, smooth, Barbie-like bump down there. It just keeps getting worse the longer you read it. That's sad. Why do men not Google things? Speaking of, just Google things. Just Google things, will you? On a camping trip, she was worried about parking the car on the grass because she thought the grass was going to grow, puncturing and flattening the tires. Wow, that's pretty dumb. It's literally called blades of grass, people. Protect your wheels. You know what's weird? You know what, though? That could have been one of those things where you were taught something at a young age and you just kept repeating it and you didn't understand it. One time, for a long time, I heard my brother spell the word please, but then he said the letter A afterwards. So he's like, Please, A blah, 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 blah. And I think he just changed the sentence to something else. But I, for a long time, thought the proper way to spell please was Pleasea. Sometimes these weird things you learn when you're a kid stick around well beyond their expiration date. A girl I dated in college broke my laptop because she kept trying to get a USB drive in. Instead of, flipping it, she just pushed harder and harder until it broke my port and motherboard. Oh, God. Do you remember that time before USB-C, USB-A, where you would take it and you'd flip it over and you just keep doing that until death? Man, USB-C is so good. We take that for granted. I can't wait till USB-C is the GOAT for everything. You know what I mean? I can't wait till it's just used for everything. Here's USB-C. You guys know what I'm talking about. Boom. Boom. Flip it. It works for both sides. What does the richest person you know do for a living? That's pretty good. I want to know. I want to find out. Top comment right here is, her grandfather created The Price is Right. She's been living off of the residuals her family gets, which is apparently tens of millions set aside just for her alone. I used to think those trust fund kids that just spend their fortune and never work for income would have run out of money one day. Well, we were all hanging out and someone asked how wealth like that even works. She seemed happy to explain how, even if the royalties stopped overnight, the wealth grows in her accounts from interest and dividends, and that is more than she spends in a year. Plus, it is taxed less than our income is. That's true. Income tax is different than capital gains tax. I think capital gains tax is like, 25% or something. And yeah, it's insane. Exactly. One could have only $2 million in a 5% interest account and make $70K a year in just interest. Edit. 5% of $2 million would be $100,000 a year. So, okay. So there you go, guys. All you got to do is just save up $2 million. That's how you make six figures. Look, the rich operate differently, right? One thing that I found out was that if you own a car that weighs over 6,000 pounds, you can write off 100% of it because it's considered by your business as heavy machinery. Heavy machine. Do you know why people have G-Wagons so much? Because they weigh over 6,000 pounds. Tesla Model X, Tesla Model Y, over 6,000 pounds. 100% of tax write-off. Isn't that crazy? A former actor turned author who now runs a llama ranch and a sex spa up north. That's smart. Not a lot of people will pay to fuck a llama, but the ones who will pay a lot to do it. I don't like this joke, okay? We're going to move on. So, I'll pack up my bags. There's a guy I work with who started with one Jimmy John's franchise and grew it to 10. After 10 years, he sold them and invested the profits into the stock market and real estate. That sounds good. He managed all this while continuing his job as an airline pilot. By the way, airline pilots make like $100K a year, which he still does. He even owns and flies his own private jet. Wow. He owns a jet? Okay, so we're talking multi-millions here. Seems like pilots can make some real bank if they can avoid having 8 children in 7 years. Is that a thing? Are any pilots out there or flight attendants out there? Can you tell me if this is a thing? Do pilots notoriously have a bunch of secret families or something? Is that what this is? I guess you fly all around the world. You don't know what time zone it is. You forget who's your wife or not, and so you get everybody all knocked up. I would be the richest airline pilot ever because women are not interested in me in the slightest. LOL. Frowny face. Look at this frowny face. Well, maybe it's because you refer to yourself as a wolf. All right, we're done on this question. That's really interesting. Who was somebody that everyone thought was crazy, but turned out to be right? Kotoku Wamura, for sure. He was the mayor of the Japanese town of Fudai for several decades, starting just after World War II up into the 1980s. He was aware that Fudai had been flattened flattened into the past by tsunamis, only to be rebuilt in the same place. He learned that there was nothing protecting this town, so he ordered the construction of a state-of-the-art seawall. It was very expensive and laughed at as a folly. While Mura was personally attacked as crazy and wasteful in the national and even international press, he died in 1997. In 2011, when the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami struck Japan, it killed roughly 20,000 people, but the Fudai seawall held, and that town escaped almost untouched. 3,000 people were saved. You know, people who find success post-death is such a sad thing. I think Edgar Allan Poe, died broke, didn't he? When Poe died in 1849, he was reportedly destitute with just 50 cents to his name. That's so sad to me. These people who die not knowing what great lives they would lead. You know, what was the scariest we need to leave now gut feeling that you've ever experienced? Surfing a fairly secluded reef break offshore across the channel. This place is in a very southern state of Australia. Overcast weather, but a still amazing day for the waves. I was surfing with only one other guy. We were trading waves and getting to know each other in between sets. I asked what he did for a living, and he was a marine biologist. We'd both recently moved to the area and were new to surfing as well. Despite it being extremely good surf, after 40 minutes, he says, "I don't like this. Something feels off. I feel like I'm being watched, like I'm bait." I didn't want to leave as it was an excellent surf, but this guy was a marine biologist, so I took his instinct as a sign to play it safe. We paddled back across the deep channel together as quickly as we could without panicking and walked the 15-minute trek back to the car park talking shit the whole way. I got his mobile number for future surfs together, given how small town it is here and not knowing anyone. We noticed a 15-foot inflatable boat pull up near the reef and hang out for a bit without much thought. Later that night, while looking at my social media, I read about 3 fishermen at the same location we were at that morning at the same time. In their boat, as they pulled up to check their cray pots on the beach side of the reef, they were circled twice by a great white shark that was as big as their boat. That guy most likely saved me from a horrible experience that day. I messaged him with a link to the Facebook page with the comments regarding that experience. Chills ran through my body for a good 20 minutes. He was adamant he felt the presence of something, and he was right. That's spooky, man. You're a marine biologist. You're out there. You're surfing. You have a good time. You're meeting this chick. You're having a good time. You're surfing. The waves are cool. They're still, or whatever phrases they use that I don't know because I have the athleticism of a Pikachu. Actually, they're pretty athletic, aren't they? But suddenly you realize you were in the presence of a great white shark. Have you seen the megalodon? The meg? Big. The ocean freaks me out. I really don't enjoy going to the beach very much. And a part of that is because when you're out there, okay, and you can't see anything around you, freaky time. Freaky time USA, population, everybody. What is it, like 95% of the ocean hasn't been explored? Over half the ocean hasn't been explored? What? Scary. When I was about 8 in 1985, an old El Camino pulled up alongside my friend and I with a man saying he knew my mom. He did know her name, but something felt off, so I grabbed my friend and ran. When we told my mom, she went white and called the cops. Turns out this guy thought my mom had stolen his job at the steel mill she worked at the time and wanted to hurt her. He already had a warrant out for nearly killing his wife that morning. When I was 16, my mom had a terrible feeling about an outing some friends and I were going on. Hindsight being 2020, it was a stupid move for me to go anyway, but I did. Long story short, there was a car accident. My 2 best friends died, and I nearly did. It'll be 30 years in November. I still regret getting in that car every day. My friends might still be alive if I hadn't. My mom had that mama spidey sense. She still does. More recently, I was at our other house in the country with my oldest son and his wife and kids. There was a break in the storms, and my son decided to go home instead of spending the night. I was filled with dread at the thought of them going home so late, since we were dealing with intermittent but severe storms. So much dread that I started crying and begging them not to leave. Sounds like you got the mama sense that your mama had. Thankfully, they agreed. We all started home the next morning with them following me and my husband. We came up on this stretch of road that we knew had no lights at night to see police barricading a washed out bridge and cranes retrieving cars. We all piled out of our cars to ask the officers what happened. Apparently, there were several cars that have kept going, not knowing that the bridge was out. The lone survivor in the first car had told the police that they went off the bridge at about 9:30 p.m. That's about the time my son wanted to leave. My husband just looked at me, and my boy hugged me extra tight because he knew what could have happened. Yo, maybe out there are some, there are some beings or some threads or some I don't know if it's quantum theory, string theory, or if there's an extra dimensional being coming in and tapping you on the shoulder and be like, hey, freak out, okay? Because if they go right now, they're going to die. You know what I mean? I don't know. Who knows, man? Maybe there's a guardian angel situation. I don't know. Years ago, before cell phones, I was driving home from dropping my husband at the train at 4:30 in the morning. God, that's early. Oh, man, I'm not going anywhere at 4:30. I'm not going anywhere. Only me and one other car on the road. He started turning where I turned twice, so I didn't go home. I went to an all-night gas station and called the police. I gave them a description of his car. 3 weeks later, he was arrested. Turns out he was following women home and driving past their house and doubling back to blank them. No one had noticed his car. I'm glad I paid attention. Yo. So this person could tell they were kind of being followed, and they turned around and they were still followed, and then they turned around again and they were still followed. Yo. Reminds me of a story. One time I was in high school, and me and my friend Ben were driving around, and we were followed by this car. It was after a play. I was all up in my like old man makeup, and he was in his little boy makeup, which was really funny. We were being followed by this car. I could tell that they were following us. I took kind of back alleys, and they kept chasing after us. And so what I did was I pulled into a Publix parking lot, and I said, Ben, grab the baseball bat, because I always had a baseball bat in the back of my car. I don't know why. I was 17. I don't know what was going on. And so he grabbed it, and then it was a stick shift. So I whipped that car into first. I went, shoo! I skidded it around, boop, 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 and I faced head on this car that was following us. And I drove really fast. I charged at him, and I turned around, and I rolled my window down. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? And they're like, we were just messing with you. I was like, I'm going to fucking kill you. You know, it's spooky, man. Don't follow anybody for any reason. I was in Taco Bell with my daughter, and I saw a guy come in and back out with a t-shirt over his hand. I told her to dump her tray and get moving. We went out to the car quickly and left. Found out later on the news that the guy robbed the place with the gun hiding under his t-shirt. Spooky, spooky, spooky. All right, here we go. Let's do more. Guys who have slept with married women. Why did you do it? Did you feel bad about it afterward? Why not? She was my wife. I didn't feel bad at all. You know what? I'm going to leave it there because I want it to be a fun, uplifting thing. Yeah, if you have any thoughts on any of these stories or any one of these that you want to answer, leave them in the comments below. I'm going to read them. In the meantime, I'm on a little outro.